So indeed, thank you. And let's move to the next slide. We're doing fine for time. We might not have much time for general discussion later. Okay, social effects of basic and mentalistic ostension. Let me again read from our paper. So we argue that ostensive communication is a distinct form of social interaction. When both communicator and addressee play their part, ostensive communication establishes some degree of mutual involvement between them, raising expectation in conspecific that one may have occasions to interact with, which in the future can lead to social benefit if these expectations are fulfilled. And sorry, raising expectation in conspecific that one may have occasion to interact with in the future can lead to a social benefit if these expectations are fulfilled and a social cost otherwise. This situation is likely to arise if the interacting individuals tend to choose partners that have been more reliable in past interaction, a partner's choice policy, which has been linked to morality in humans, and I refer to Nicolas Beaumar's work, but also found in other animals such as cleaner fish and the client reef fish, Shari and Noah's work, among animals that are cognitively, one assumes, quite simpler than humans and probably even apes. So according to Heinz and Scott Phillips, and I cite that because we're in agreement with that, human communication takes place in a uniquely developed partner choice ecology. And this goes a long way towards making it reliable enough not only to survive, but even to increase in power and scale over historical time. So with that background, let me look at a number of questions which are more or less directly related. So Alessandro, right, since degree and kind of mutual involvement between speakers may vary in different situations, individual expectations of relevance will vary accordingly. If this is the case, do you think the difference in the relationship between speakers might generate difference in how they interpret messages? Here I'm just so much in agreement. I mean, this seems to be basic to not just to relevance theory, not just to the present paper, but to the whole pragmatic approach. Where interpretation depends on the context, and much important part of the context is the relationship and indeed the mutual involvement and expectation between speakers, between interlocutors. So just yes, fundamentally, it's you're reminding us of a very basic point, which not developed further in itself in this particular paper. Robin, do you think there are any instinct difference in potential social relationship impact of purely basic versus purely mentalistic ostension in human interaction? Yes, purely basic, where you don't do any mentalizing. This among humans, this tend to be uh, uh, limited to simple practical things and so on, so on. So and typically occurs when there is no personal involvement whatsoever. So we give the example of the waiter in a cafe who points to customers who's in a restaurant who seems to be looking for the toilet and just point to the toilet. They don't even look at each other. So it's a very minimal. So basic ostension, it works, it's effective, it works because it's ostensive, but in terms of the potential of this kind of basic uh, basic ostension for social relationship is limited. Of course, there are situations where you can achieve a lot with basic ostension, but because it will cause mentalizing. The mentalizing may not be mentalistic ostension. It may be because you point to something, and this reveals a lot about the fact that you want to help the person, or that but that's not what you communicated. It just gives insights about your behavior. But now we're back to the fact that being mentalizers, our interactions are affected by the fact that we mentalize others' behavior all the time, and that applies also to basic ostensive behavior. If it becomes part of what's communicated by this basic, apparently basic ostension, that ostension is not that basic. It's of a mixture. If that contributes to the relevance, expected relevance of basically ostensive behavior. Does that help, Robin?
Sorry. Yes, that does help. And in fact, I think I hadn't got to the very end of your paper when I wrote this particular question, because the waiter and the toilet example I did see later, and I thought, oh yeah, that's relevant here. I mean, the bigger there's a much sort of, for me, bigger and sort of more impactful set of questions, which I'll just mention, but we don't need to go there because there's not much time. But you always made a really interesting set of distinctions between ostensive communication and certain kinds of covert communication, and how those kinds of covert communication avoided setting up certain social commitments and responsibilities and so on and so forth. And so it was just thinking about that whole general area of how different kinds of communication affect our social relationships that really prompted this question. So, I mean, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Oriani, so here's a question. The movement of ostensive communication from non-mentalistic to mentalistic is based on the communication process in the real world. However, is this pattern possible even for organizational setups with standardized communication protocols or scripted form of communication? If yes, how? If not, why? So it's an interesting question which calls for more research in an area where we're not particularly competent, because indeed communication within organizational frameworks with special procedures and so on are an interesting object to study, and the question you raise makes perfect sense. I would just point out that you probably will find the whole gamut, because there are indeed a number, for reason of efficiency, a number of things that can be dealt with a simple basic ostension are standard. So a lot of time not wasted by simple gestures, like pointing, also putting things in certain place in a communicative manner, and so on, so that some are parsimonious in terms of the effort and time involved in communication. On the other hand, very central to in organizational setups, there are forms of communication which are highly mentalistic. Think of bargaining, which is between organizations or within organizations. These are extremely complex, highly metarepresentational form of in part standardized, but typically standardization is just to push the subtlety of metarepresentation further. So, if it's your domain, go ahead, do research on that. It's quite interesting. Any reaction, Oriana?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for answering. I think, I have to do research in this area. Yes, I am doing, but yes, thank you for the explanation.
So good luck with your research. Vanessa, it's a similar kind of question, similar kind of answer. In social media interactions, where communication often takes form through features such as internet memes, emojis, how can the principle of mentalistic ostension be applied to enhance the clarity of intended messages or the inferential processing? What is your understanding? We look into communication on social media platform. Again, it's a vast topic of research. There are a number of new forms of communication involved in many respects, both by the means they use, by the kind of audience you get, by the broadcast character of much of that communication, where it's pragmatics in general and our approach in particular may help understand things better. And I look forward to seeing the research you will be doing. I don't have much to contribute to that. I just one remark. So a lot of the things, kind of thing you say, like emojis, but also things like likes and so on. So a lot of communication is self-signaling. Where just you approve something, you put yourself on a certain side, you show that you like something, that you don't like something, and so and the importance is not, at least part of the relevance is not about what you say about the apparent topic of the exchange, but about what it signals about you, your relationship to the people you react to one group versus another, and so on. But it's and the extent to which this is what you communicate ostensively may vary. It's not obvious. It may be a side effect, or it may be indeed something that you ostensibly communicate, this kind of self-signaling. So I would be happy to find more interesting research, and I encourage you to pursue it. Vanessa does that. It may be disappointing, but that's the best I can offer. Okay. I'll take that silence as a consent or whatever. No, you should never take silence as consent, sorry. Yeah, I don't know.